Hello and welcome to everyone. Um, Welcome to our Sunday talks given by our fabulous teachers who do provide their time for absolutely free in the hope that it helps the yoga festival in some way through donations and things like this. And we therefore are very privileged and always wish to thank our teachers. Trish is one of them. Not only runs a fabulous stall over at the lake field, but is a renowned expert in gut health. So we had mental health in the morning through my class. Now we've got gut health in the afternoon. What more could you possibly want out of a World Yoga Festival? I won't say any more other than we've had her talks before, and it was incredibly welcome. And the number of bottles of bubbling cabbage that are going around the UK is unheard of. So I will hand over to Trish and merely say thank you very much, Trish. Lovely to have you again.
Oh, look, it is amazing. It's lovely to be back, and I hope that you've all had a bit of fun making your sauerkraut. So today we're going to move on a little bit, continue the range and expand the range, expand your knowledge in that wonderful magic and miracle and transformation that happens in the kitchen. And I love that you've already had mental health this morning and gut health this afternoon. Did you know that there are 8 times more messages going back up from the gut to the brain? Okay, we know that the brain is constantly sending these messages. We're identifying what food is coming in through our smell, our senses, and then into the mouth and in the saliva. And straight away, the brain is sending messages to the stomach, what enzymes need producing, what's coming, what needs to happen. Now, there is proven that we have 8 times more messages going back up from the gut to the brain via the vagus nerve. So this is why yoga and meditation is so fantastic for the digestion, fantastic for the immune system, because we have this release of endorphins, release of serotonin, the release of all the hormones that are responsible for a good immune system. So that direct correlation between our inner kingdom and our inner garden of bacteria is so vital to our mental health. So I'm going to teach you some really amazing ways to improve your inner kingdom, to improve your inner garden of microbiome. And, this is really fun. This is really delicious way to have a bit of fun in the kitchen. And the real magic, I say to all of my clients, the real magic when you're healing, yes, it happens on the yoga mat, for sure. It happens when you're sitting silently in meditation, for sure. But also the real healing, the transformation when it comes to nourishing ourselves happens in the kitchen. So this is where we have to get busy. We have to get, grubby. We have to get active. And we really need to bring the garden inside and then bring the garden inside to heal, from the inside out. Everything about probiotics is building up that bacteria so you can feel good from the inside out. So today we're going to do kombucha. And I know we touched on kombucha a little bit last time, but we're going to do kombucha. We're going to do water kefir. We're going to do a milk kefir. We're going to talk about second fermentation. This is where the real fun happens, where you can flavor, you can add your little mark, and you can make all these really beautiful fizzy concoctions. So that's super exciting. And then stay tuned to the end, because I'm going to give you a little bonus lesson on how to make your own, really easy, how to make your own coconut yogurt if we've got time. All right. So as we're going through, certainly ask some questions. I'll do my best to answer them. And if I miss them at the time, we'll go back through at the end and make sure we're covering off all of your questions. Now, what you will need for this class, if you're going to repeat this lesson at home, and we will have a recording, so you may need a little bit more time to gather your ingredients, because you will need a SCOBY. And each of the ferments I'm going to teach you does involve a SCOBY. Now, a SCOBY is an acronym for symbiotic colony of yeast of bacteria and yeast. So symbiotic colony of bacteria and yeast, SCOBY. And SCOBYs look like these aliens. So a kombucha SCOBY, for example, is this big thing, like it's a colony, it's a living thing. And whenever you're touching, little tip firstly, whenever you're touching your SCOBY or you're dealing with the inside of your receptacle, it's just a good idea just to, I mean, I've washed my hands, but I've just got a bit of apple cider vinegar, just organic apple cider vinegar with the mother, which is another thing you can make yourself very easily. But that's another lesson. So I'm just going to handle my SCOBY, so I'll just make sure that, you know, that will kill off any really other bacteria, but I have just washed my hands. So I will show you what a SCOBY looks like. Now, they get as big as the jar that you have them in, all right? So this is quite big because it's a big jar, so it takes up the entire circumference of this jar. Now, that is the SCOBY. It looks a bit alien-like. It does have a few layers, so you can peel these off. They're very good in the compost. They're very good. I do sell these. I just cover the cost of postage, really, and the vacuum packing and the liquid. But they can be peeled off, and then they can be used to make new batches if you need, or they can just be left staying in there. But so that's quite, I know it's quite alien-like, really, isn't it? But that's the symbiotic colony of yeast and bacteria. So you need one of those to start a kombucha, all right? And I do encourage you, I'm going to get a cough. I do encourage you to, when you get a SCOBY, you will get it with some mother liquid. And the mother liquid is this. Some already, you've already got a bit of tea there, all right? And that will be quite strong and probably a little bit vinegary, and that's okay. So if you ever get posted a SCOBY that is dry, it's not ideal. Normally people would send you a bit of the mother liquid with it. Okay, so making your own kombucha is very, very easy. This morning I made a big pot of tea. I'm talking big pot of tea, all right? And in here I have, it's nearly full to the brim, and in here I have six organic green tea bags, so they're going to go into the compost. So I use Kefir organic green tea, and I tend to like green tea because it's a little bit more gentle than black tea. Black tea is fine, but the green tea just tends to make a little bit more of a gentle taste to the end. You can use rooibos, or you can use caffeine-free, but really the symbiotic colony of yeast and bacteria is feeding off caffeine and sugar, and it turns it into this amazing probiotic. So I made this big pot of tea. In this pot of tea, I have 1 cup of organic sugar. All right, so I just used, I just had, Sainsbury's organic sugar, and I put 1 cup into this. Now, I did this morning because I wanted it to cool down. I don't want to be feeding my SCOBY with hot tea because it will kill off all the bacteria. So I've made that big pot of tea, and I'm basically just going to pour it in. Now, when you first get started with a SCOBY, you want to make sure you've got enough mother liquid, and you may find that the first batch of your fermentation might take a little bit of time. When your SCOBY travels, it may get knocked around in the post or whatever, and it may take a little bit of time to settle. So your first batch or two may take just a little bit of time to settle down. Okay, and that's it. That's pretty much it for the first fermentation. And I'm going to leave that probably for about a week. Now, I say about. What it depends on is how much sugar, how much mother liquid, how thick your SCOBY is, but particularly how warm it is in your kitchen. because the warmer it is, the more quickly it will ferment. So as we're going into colder, cooler nights and cooler days, the fermentation process may take a little bit longer. Certainly, I know when I ferment when I'm in Australia, the process is very, very quick. So I love these little sockets. Like I reuse these. They're just like the little sockets that you have, for your feet. And obviously it's a clean one, and maybe it's an odd one. So I keep odd socks and stockings and things, and I can reuse them in the kitchen because firstly, they've already got the elastic attached, which makes it really easy to sit over the top. And that just allows air to get in, but no bugs, no vinegar flies or flies to get in. And that is going to sit on my bench top. And in about a week's time, I'm going to taste it, and I'm going to see that it doesn't have too much sweetness, but it may have a little bit of sweetness left. And that is absolutely fine to drink. But what I really love to do is create these second fermentations. And this is where you get a fizzy result. Now, you may be aware that you can buy lots of these in the supermarket now. You'll see them in Sainsbury's, Waitrose, Tesco's, Co-op. You can buy kombucha, okay? And you'll see it in the refrigerated section. And this can be really fizzy, all right? What you will find with most of these kombuchas is that they have added some CO2. They have added some carbon dioxide. They've fizzed it up, all right? A natural fizzy kombucha. And these are great bottles. If you do buy them, they're great bottles to keep because then they're already labelled and they can give you some ideas for flavouring as well. But you may find that they're very, very fizzy, all right? And I like mine fizzy, but not too fizzy. So this one is, I've reused this bottle, and this has a natural, gentle fizz to it. It's not too fizzy. Okay, so second fermentation happens when you draw from your main receptacle. So it's got a stainless steel tap on the bottom here, which is very handy for pouring. And I noticed that you can get these at the range and at kitchen shops very cheaply, these big jars, but they have plastic taps on the bottom and they wear out very quickly. So I have replaced the spigot as a stainless steel one, and I'm sure that that's going to last a lot longer. Now, I reuse a lot of glass jars. So this is a passata jar. I keep bottles. I've got a whole cupboard full of bottles. These are quite good as well. But I love these because when you add fruit, so you could add raspberries or strawberries or a cinnamon quirl or some grated ginger, whatever flavour you would like. I find that in these jars, it's easier to get out because if you put it in a jar like this, then the raspberries or the strawberries could get stuck, or pieces of lime could get stuck, and they're a little bit hard to pour out. So I did learn that the hard way. Now, a little word of advice. When you are doing your second ferment, and I used to use a lot of jars like this because they've got a very good seal on them. However, be careful because you can have quite explosive results. I did do a ginger cinnamon. Now, it will depend on how much sugar you've still got left in here, but if the sugar content of whatever you're adding is quite high, like ginger sugar is quite high or raspberry sugar is quite high, I have had one of these sit on my shelf for a couple of months with some raspberries and ginger. And when I went to open it, and I always make a habit of opening these outside now, but luckily I was outside to open this, and I went to release the neck, and the pressure buildup was so great in this bottle, the entire neck of the bottle broke off and flew. I don't know, it went over to the neighbour's yard, over the back fence. It completely broke off, and all the contents of the bottle shot out, like, you know, when they do the celebration on the platform after a race, after a big car race or something. Yeah, it was like that, but the whole neck of the bottle completely broke off. So the pressure can build up. It can be quite lively. Just be careful, a word of warning. I have also had, when I opened them on the inside the kitchen, I have had kombucha all over the ceiling from opening this, and it was spraying everywhere. So be careful. That's why I do prefer these bottles, because the seal is not as tight, and they're easy to get the fruit out. So second fermentation, you can just add whatever flavor you like. And because you are sealing it, you are allowing the buildup of the gas. So when you open it, you'll hear this, and that's really good. Oh, this one's a bit hard to open. It could be risky. No, that's okay. And so when you open this, it's quite easy to get the fruit out, and you can just pour this. And you can see that this is slightly effervescent. It's slightly fizzy. And that is a little bit dry, a little bit sweet, and a little bit fizzy. And this is a fantastic sundowner drink to have. You know, if you like alcohol-free living like me, then that is a lovely substitute. Now, be careful. You can have a little bit of alcohol buildup in a kombucha. You could have maybe definitely less than 0.05%, but there can be that just a little bit. And it will depend very much on how much sugar you put in and how much sugar is in the fruit. But that is really lovely. It's a dry drink. It's a refreshing drink, mildly sweet, mildly fizzy. And you can play around with flavors. So some of the flavors that I love, I mean, I've got a lot of raspberries at the moment because we've got late season raspberries coming on at the allotment and in the garden, which is great. And it's a beautiful time of year to spend time in the kitchen making these things. So you've got some really interesting drinks to have through at the winter. And these will keep a long time. So some of my favorite flavors, I love ginger. This is a ginger tonic. You can see in the bottom here, I've got quite a lot of ginger residue in there. I've grated that ginger really fine, and it's taken a while. This is quite fizzy. This is like a natural ginger beer. But what I have done with this one is I have added 1 drop of On Guard essential oil, which is cinnamon and clove. So that's a really good tonic for the digestive system, but also for the immune system. I really love that flavor. One of my other favorite flavors, oh, this is interesting, peach and strawberry. So again, this will be a little bit more fizzy. Oh, I'll just get another glass. Yeah. You can probably see the difference with this one. Oh, no, it's about the same. It's a little bit more fizzy because of the size of the bottle, a little bit smaller, and potentially with the strawberry and the peach flavor. And these seal quite well. So that's very, very nice combination. So you can play around with the flavors. And that was just a matter of getting some fresh peach and some fresh strawberries and chopping them up and putting them in like this, and then decanting them into another bottle. So that can keep on the shelf, you know, for quite some time, for many months to come. What have I got here? Oh, it's strawberry and raspberry. I always like to put the date on as well, just so I don't make sure that they don't get too old. If they become too old and they become a little bit vinegary, then they're fantastic in a salad dressing, or even just a capful in a smoothie. You're still getting all that benefit of the probiotics. And each thing that you're making, whether it's a kefir or water kefir or a probiotic or sauerkraut or kimchi, they all have different strains of bacteria. I won't go into exactly what strains. You could research that for yourself, but some of the really long names, different strains of bacteria. And all of these work very well as they work through the gut. So a little bit and often, you know, you can have that much a day is a very good way to start. Okay, we're getting a few questions. Okay. Yes. So Lisa is saying, it'd be good to know how much and how long to let it brew, and at what point you need to refrigerate. So even with these, in this country, I'm not going to refrigerate these at all. They will continue to ferment, but I've taken the fruit out. So that will stay on the shelf sealed in my utility room for months to come. I tend to not refrigerate my second ferment at all because firstly, I don't really have a lot of room in my fridge for that sort of thing. Once I've opened it, if it's half full like this, I'd probably put this in the fridge and to have a nice cold drink. But otherwise, I tend not to refrigerate them. This will probably need be ready for second fermentation in about a week. You can taste it. If it's still very, very sweet, if it tastes like a very sweet green tea, it's not quite ready. And it will very much depend on your tastes and what you like. So, with the sauerkraut, I've said, taste it after a couple of weeks and check whether it's to your liking, because some people like it really sour, and so you could let it go on for a few more weeks. It will very much depend on your taste buds, but if things are tasting too sweet, then it could ferment a lot longer. And if it's too sour and if it's too vinegary, then keep it, because I've had this one in here for a few years, and I use this in my in a spray bottle with some water and 1 drop of lemon oil, and I use it to clean my windows. So that's, nothing goes to waste. Okay, how much kombucha can you have in a day? Again, it will very much depend on your current health levels. So I treat a lot of people that have digestive issues. They may have candida or a small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, or they may be experiencing bloating. And if you have some of those issues, or malabsorption, where they're not able to eat any fruit. So if this was you, if you are struggling with some symptoms, some digestive discomfort, then I really encourage you to start off very small. So you may start off with half of that a day and see how you feel, and then work your way up to about that much. Now, I have been known to, on an afternoon, an evening out, I could probably take a bottle this size with me and have that instead of an alcoholic beverage and sip on that like I would a wine. It will very much depend on your gut, what is going on for you in your gut. And, I always say that the body whispers a long time before it starts to shout, and your tummy will tell you if it is something that is good for you or not. So if you are experiencing acid reflux or heartburn or a digestive discomfort or bloating, then you need to take things very slowly. Also, you have a reaction called the hexema die-off. It's a hexema reaction. So when you first start to introduce this new probiotics, this new range of bacteria to your stomach, your body can have a little bit of a freak out for a little moment and think, oh goodness, you may feel like you're coming down with a flu. You may feel achy. You may feel really tired as the microbiome adjusts, and then things start to improve. So with all of my clients, I really encourage them to keep a food journal, to keep a journal of any reactions that you're having and work with those. All right. So you may find that you feel a little bit achy and tired, but in 3 days' time, you feel very, very different as that balance of bacteria changes. All right. But I would say to start off with, if you're completely new to fermented foods, I would start off with a little bit and often. So a little bit of sauerkraut with your lunch or your dinner, a little bit, maybe half this amount, half a small glass at breakfast time or in a smoothie, and see how you go. Okay, what else? What other flavors have we got here? Ginger, peach, and licorice. So I've stuck a licorice stick in there. All right, you can do the same with cinnamon quirls or vanilla. Oh my goodness. Vanilla and raspberry. So a whole vanilla pod with some raspberries was divine, was so good. So you can play around, have a little bit of a think about what flavors you would like, and have a little bit of a play around with what you would think would work well for you. I have a couple of books. I'm on the lookout for books all the time, and I did pick this one up in Australia, which is a beautiful book, love kombucha, make your own, and listen to some of these flavors. You can use different flavored tea as well. So you could use oolong, like a smoky tea. You could use some fruit teas. Remember, with your first batch, it's good to have a bit of caffeine and sugar in there. But listen to some of these combinations: goji berries, chia seeds with blueberries, ooh, lime and ginger kombucha ice cream float. Wow, that would be worth trying. You could do mocktails and cocktails, like a frozen margarita with a kombucha. You can do, like, rose hip is very, very nice. You could put some flowers, like rose petals, spinach, kiwi, and watercress. Wow. You know, that is what I love about kombucha, that is, you know, you're making your own B12. So if you are vegan, then this is a great way of getting B12 in your diet. But adding in watercress and spinach, so you've got vitamins B1, B2, B6, C, E, manganese, carotene, calcium, iron and copper in abundance. Fantastic. It looks so nice. Rhubarb would be interesting. Cucumber and mint is a lovely one. Pear, when the pears are in season, is lovely. Pomegranate looks beautiful. Pineapple is very, very fizzy. It has bromelain in it, but it really, because it's a very high sugar content, it becomes very fizzy, very active. So that would be one that you'd be very careful when you open. Okay, what else have we got? Mango, apple and mint. Apple and mint is beautiful. Apple and cinnamon, beautiful. I love the berries ones because they're, you know, that's really good. And ginger is very lively. So you can just, you can juice the fruit and put it in, or you can just slice it up and put it into the neck of the bottle and then wait. You know, this raspberry one, that's only 3 days old, and already the color is just beautiful. You know, the color is coming out of the raspberries and going into the kombucha. So that's really beautiful. Have a little bit of a play, see what sort of flavors you'd like to create, and just be aware that can get a little bit lively. Okay, let's move on to kefir. Now, kefir is a very different method. Kombucha can be left on its own for weeks and months. I've got this one here that I've had in my utility room sitting dormant. All right, a couple of scobies in there. I've had that sitting in there for months. When I've gone to Australia for 6 months, I close them up and I sit them in there in the dark and I slow them right down, and they're absolutely fine. Kefir is very different. Kefir is a very lively fermentation, and it happens very quickly. So it needs much more attention. So let me show you these now. So we're going to cover milk kefir and water kefir. Now, these grains are, again, they're scobies, so they're symbiotic colony of yeast and bacteria. And this water kefir, these are Japanese water crystals, and they're a little bit rubbery, and they're fantastic for, very good if you have a sensitivity to dairy, then you may be more inclined to have water grains rather than the milk grains. However, I do know that quite a few people, my clients who do have a sensitivity to dairy, can cope with kefir grains and making their own kefir yogurt, because it becomes a very different product. The grains will feed off the sugars in the milk, and because they're very high in enzymes, they will make that milk much more easily for you to digest. And enzymes are very, very important. So when you're buying yogurt from the shop, if it's been pasteurized, you know, if it's live and it's bioorganic, then it does have those live cultures. But if you're buying some of the really sugary yogurts, then the sugar content is still very, very high, or they've added a lot of sugar. They've added some gums and thickeners and all sorts of nonsense into them, and they're not nearly as good for you. So you can easily make your own, and it is much more cost effective. So I'm going to show you dead easy how to make milk kefir first. get yourself a glass jar. Got my little sock on top, my little stocking. So a glass jar, okay? We're going to make a fair bit today out of this and make sure it's sterile. So make sure it's very clean to begin with. And we're just going to put the kefir grains in there. Now, the first batch of kefir that you make when you buy kefir grains, and I'm going to share with you a link, freshly fermented, I have a code that you can use to get some grains from them. You can buy them off the internet. And so we're just going to start with that. But when you first get your grains, you may find that the first two batches that you make may not be as good. The grains may just need a little bit of time to settle into their new environment. It's like the new puppy. I got a new puppy a couple of days ago, so it's settling in well. So think of your grains like that. Now, I've got this amazing milk. This is local organic milk from the dairy just around the corner, and it's super thick and lovely and creamy. And I'm just going to add 250 mils. So half a cup there, that's probably enough. I'm going to leave a little bit of space because what happens with the grains is that they become bigger. They get fed by the protein in the milk and the sugars in the milk, and the grains will become bigger, right? Now, if I was in a hot climate, I would put that into my fridge to ferment. And the fridge is just like it slows the fermentation down. I've got my little socket, and I'm just going to keep that over the top so no flies or anything get in, and that is absolutely fine. That is fine to sit at room temperature for the next 48 hours, all right? Now, when we go to use this, we need to separate the whey and the curds and the kefir grains. And the way we do this is just getting a bowl, getting a sieve. So I like to use a plastic sieve and a plastic spatula. They've said that the kefir doesn't really like being in contact with metal. I've never done it. I've never known it to be a problem, but I always just use the plastic sieve. So now here is one I've got from before, and I don't know whether you can see this or not, but this has got quite a lot of whey at the top, all right? Now this is already several weeks old, and it has got quite a lot of whey at the top, and that can be used as a starter for other ferments. So you could use that little bit of whey in the beginning of your sauerkraut or your kimchi. It's very, very good. It's actually really good for you. It can also be used to soak oats overnight. Can also be used very good for dog food, very good for their coat. So anything that is good for us, for our tummy, can be very, very good for beneficial for your pets as well. Okay, so when you go to separate it, you may find that you would have, you would just pour it through here. All right, you may find you've got some lumpy bits at the bottom, and that's absolutely fine. And then you would slowly work the kefir through. And then you may end up with some lumpy bits at the end where you've got your grains. This has got no grains in it because I've already done it. But you could just do that. And then with the grains at the end, you could put them back in the jar. You can rinse them off. Some people suggest to rinse them off. I don't ever do that. You just put them back in the jar. All right. And then you've got that too. That is fantastic for adding to a smoothie. As you can see, I've made a green smoothie, and that's got kefir. My kids don't really like kefir that much. It's a little bit like sour, fizzy milk, but it's very, very good for them. So I mask the flavor by putting it into a smoothie. You could also put it into a little chia pudding, make a little chia pudding. This has got some homemade granola on top, a layer of soaked chia seeds, and then the layer of kefir. Now you could also put a little bit of raw honey with that, so the kids will be happy with that. If I just gave them the fizzy sour milk, they'd probably think, yuck, Mum, I don't like that. So my son was telling me this morning, Mum, I don't really like that kefir stuff, but it's in the smoothie every day, so they don't really know, that's fine. So there we go, and then you can use that, that's absolutely fine. Now with this one, there you've got another starter, all right? So you can add some more milk to that. And again, just make sure it's covered, it's getting air, so it's getting that lacto fermentation. Give a little bit of a stir and leave that at room temperature, or you could, with this sort of glass, you could just leave that so it's slightly ajar, so the air is getting in, but no bugs are getting in. And leave that at room temperature again for 48 hours, and then you could slow it down by putting it in the fridge. Here's one I've made. You can't really see that on the camera, but what I've done again, because we've got so many raspberries at the moment, is I've just mixed some raspberries in with that and a little bit of honey, so that's a bit more like a pudding for the kids. You can thicken it. If you want something a lot thicker, then you can thicken it. You can put cream in if you're okay with that milk content. You can also use agar flakes. So just sprinkling some agar flakes into a little bit of water and then mixing that in is a very good way to, so you can see that. I don't know if you can see that with there we go. You can mix the agar flakes in, and that would be a very good alternative for thickening it up. Yeah, so here I've got one with that's flavoured with a little bit of raspberries in, just to take the edge off, and I've mixed in a little bit of raw honey. So that's certainly to my boys' palate. And there we go. And these will last in the fridge for weeks. They will continue to ferment. They will continue to get a little bit more sour. So again, it really depends on your taste buds and how sour you like things. I like things quite bitter. I like things quite sour. Of course, my children are a little bit different. So, okay, so that is milk kefir. And milk kefir originates in Russia, but also the Tibetan monks have been renowned for creating their milk kefir. And I love it when I visited Malaysia. Making yogurt or making kefir is very much part of the daily ritual. It's just part of what they do. And so let me know in the comments if you've traveled abroad. I haven't been to India yet. I will get there one day. I've been to 56 countries and I haven't been to India. It's quite remiss of me. But I would imagine in India with lassis and, you know, salty lassis and mango lassis and that sort of thing, that they're making the yogurt all the time. And yes, Barbara is asking, can you use goat's milk? Yes, you can. With the kefir grains, they particularly like the protein and the sugars that is in raw milk. So every now and then, if you are using plant-based milk, so if you're using oat or soy or almond, certainly goat is fine. But if you are using those plant-based milks, every now and then, give your grains some real organic, full-fat raw milk, because they thrive off those proteins in that milk. So every now and then, even if you're not going to consume it, feed them with that raw milk. But yes, certainly goat's milk, fantastic. Goat's milk, I think, such an acquired taste as well. It can get, again, it's tasting quite sour, but, you know, very, very good. Our little puppy, that's what he has, goat's milk. Very good. Okay, let me just check my notes. Make sure you cover it. Preferably full-fat milk. Full-fat milk is much better for you because all the proteins are present. All whole products are so much better for our digestion. You know, having all these light milks, skinny milks, this sort of thing, much more difficult to digest. Okay, again, in a hot temperature. So if you're in Dubai, for example, someone was watching from Dubai, much hotter, the fermentation process could happen within 24 hours rather than 48 hours. Again, you will know once it's a little bit thicker, you know, when it's ready, and you can taste it. The longer you leave it out, the more tangy and cultured it will become. And if it separates into clear whey and lumpy culture, that's absolutely fine. And you can siphon off that whey and use it into something else. And the whey, like buttermilk, you can keep it in the fridge, keep it for months. It's a fantastic way to use that in other things. So when it's ready, you pour the kefir out and using the strainer and pass it through the mesh, and then you're left with the kefir grains, and they can go back into your jar and start your process again. Your kefir grains will last for, I've heard some people keeping them for years, keeping them alive, keeping them going, keeping them growing. They will last and last. Okay, all right, so let's talk about water kefir. Water kefir, it's not as strong in the proteins and calcium and some of the minerals, but very, very good to have a play with, again, this second fermentation. Now, again, you're starting to buy products like this in the supermarkets. You can go to, I think this was Sainsbury's, and I thought, wow, that's interesting, sugar-free, but very fizzy. But an interesting drink, something, you know, something to try on a Friday night. You like to sit out, take to a barbecue or something like that. Quite an interesting drink to try. This one was strawberry peach flavor, and yeah, quite an interesting one. I compared it to mine. Again, I found it very, very fizzy, but good to keep those bottles as well because they're good size bottles. All right, so water kefir. A little bit different. Again, we're going to use the same process. We're going to use a glass jar, make sure it's sterilized. We've got the Japanese water crystals in here, and we can feed this anything. We can feed it filtered water. We could feed it coconut water. So I do like coconut kefir. That's quite nice. We can also feed it 1 spoonful of molasses, very high in iron and copper. Folic acid, very, very good. Very rich in nutrients. So you can feed it 1 spoon of molasses to get it going. You could also put in some dried fruit. So in this one here, you can see the color of this very, very dark. And in this one here, I've got, oh, it's bubbling away really nicely. I have got some dried apricots, 4 dried apricots, and make sure they're sulfur-free. So organic, sulfur-free, fantastic. I've got a spoonful of molasses and a little bit of sugar. I've put 1 tablespoon of sugar, 4 organic whole apricots, dried, and 1 dessert spoonful of molasses. So that's why you've got that dark color. Now, whenever I'm stirring, I should have this ready actually. Whenever I'm stirring again, I don't like to stir with a metal spoon, so I just stir with the end of a wooden spoon. And this is going to be very interesting. This is, it's going to be a very strong flavor. It's going to be quite sweet. And again, this should be ready in a few days. Usually wait about 48 hours. And you can try something like this. Now, this would be, you know, popping it into a glass jar like this and sealing it will be very, very good for second fermentation because of the molasses and the fruit. That'll be a really interesting flavor. So have a little bit of a play again with flavors. Again, the first batch of water kefir that you get may not have that much activity, or in saying that, with the molasses, that's a new batch and that is fizzing, and I put that in yesterday, so that is already fizzing. Now, I think water kefir grains function best with a little bit of sugar and some dried fruits and that brown molasses just to start. And we want 3 parts of refined sugar to 1 part of unrefined sugar. All right, so, you know, a few, just 3 or 4 or 5, either, I think the apricots work quite well, or unsulfured dates can also work very well, or maybe some raisins. And then certainly second fermentation, raisins and apple would be lovely. So this is one that I've had going for last year, and I know that this would be quite interesting, but apples and raisins in a water kefir will be delicious. Quite Christmassy, I think. Okay, so there we go. So there's a few different techniques. How are we going for time? Yes, we're coming up to time, right? I have got time. How often do you need to replace the kefir grains? That will, again, very much depend on how well you feed them. But generally, while ever there is some life in them, then they will be absolutely fine. The milk kefir tend to go on and on and on. And the water kefir, they get a bit bubbly. So that will start to bubble. This one, when I've just got water in it, will bubble. And whilever they're bubbly, they will get bigger and bigger. And whilever they're still bubbly, they're fine. And they could last you months, if not years. So they do go on and on. Okay, fantastic. Keep your questions coming. I'm going to show you a bonus little trick. I absolutely love coconut yogurt. It's become very popular in Australia. There's a few different brands like Cocoa, I think it's just called Cocoa. And for a little pot, this sort of size of coconut yogurt was something like $9 in Australia. So I thought, this is ridiculous. I thought, I'm going to make my own. And you know, it is so easy to do. All you need is organic coconut milk, right? And what I do is I put it in the fridge first, because then the fats are much easier to get out of the jar. So I've got all the cream and all the fatty, amazing part of the coconut. I scoop that out, and I just get the knife around the edge of the jar just to get it all out nice and easily. And when you put it in the fridge, it comes out much more easily. All right, and then all you need to do, and then this coconut milk, that can be kept for a smoothie or for some kefir, water kefir, that sort of thing, or put into a casserole or into a soup or something. And all you need to do is get yourself a couple of capsules of probiotics, which are always handy to have in the cupboard anyway. I know you're making your probiotics here, but sometimes when you need that extra little boost, it's good to have some capsules. And I open into here, and I make sure I get all of that out. And I'm going to open into here the equivalent of 3 capsules. So in one of these capsules is 15 billion bacteria. And so I'm going to open 3. So 3 times 15, all you mathematicians out there, 45 billion bacteria. And I'm just going to mix it in with a fork. And I'm going to leave that out again for 24 hours. It depends on the temperature in my kitchen. And I'm just mixing that through, making sure I get it all mixed through. And I will probably put that into a little jar. Make sure it's just all mixed in. I'll probably put it into a little bit of a jar. You could put a little bit of maple syrup or raw honey or something in with that as well. Or a little bit of stevia powder if you wanted it sweet. Again, I don't mind that it's not sweet. The coconut, the fat of the coconut's quite sweet anyway. Give it all a good mix. Pop it into one of these jars here, and that is just a divine, absolutely divine coconut yogurt for the fraction of the cost. And it's so easy to make. So I would just cover that. Again, I just cover that with a small, allow a little bit of air to get in, or with a muslin cloth, and just pop that into a jar. And there you go. You've got your own much more cost-effective coconut yogurt. Right, I did want to share with you one other thing. It's a very simple thing. It's not a probiotic, but it is also really good for your gut. And it doesn't matter how small your kitchen is, you can bring your garden inside and you can be sprouting. Now, these are mung beans. They've been going for a day and a half, and look at how big they are already. And this is just magnifying, magic, transformation in the kitchen. And this is a fantastic way to feed your family. So having sprouts on the table, like your kimchi, like your sauerkraut, having sprouts on your table daily is a really good way of getting those nutrients in. Right, I want to finish up by reading something to you because I love this book. I've come across a few books on fermentation. This is a great one, Wild Fermentation. It's a very small book. It's a lovely book. It's got lots of do-it-yourself recipes, miso, kefir, pickles, brine, tempeh cheese, sour cream, buttermilk, etc., yogurt, vinegar. Amazing little book. But I want to read this to you because I just love it. Wild fermentation involves creating conditions in which naturally occurring organisms thrive and proliferate. Wild foods, microbes included, possess great power. Some direct, unmediated force of the rhythms of the earth. And I love to tap into this power by eating weeds, eating roots, eating sprouts, eating my ferments, sauerkraut, sourdough, sour cream, kefir, kombucha, and I love also the fruits of the cultivation. So this has got a few different recipes in here, but let me just read this at the end here. Where did I see this? Agitation, right? I love this, right? Because this is so important for our modern existence. The word fermentation has another connotation. Ideas ferment, and as they spread and mutate and inspire movements for change. And in this, we have this secondary meaning for fermentation is unrest and agitation. I feel equally committed to this aspect of fermentation as an agent for change. I'm a cultural manipulator. And as you watch your fermenting food bubble away as bacteria and yeast work their transformative magic, envision yourself as an agent for change, creating agitation, unrest, releasing the bubbles of transformation into social order. So it's about that magic and that transformation. So use your fermented goodies to nourish your family and your friends and your allies. The life-affirming power of these basic foods contrasts sharply with the lifeless, industrially processed foods that fill our supermarket shelves. Draw inspiration from the action of bacteria and yeast and make your life a transformative process. So isn't that brilliant? So that's a great book. I picked up this one this is an old book from the 1960s, Kombucha Miracle Fungus, the Essential Handbook. I found that in a charity shop. That was a good one. And this Probiotics, Nature's Internal Healers. And I'm fascinated to, with some of the people that I see in clinic, some of the benefits of probiotics can be used to treat acne, aging skin, anxiety, bowel toxicity, cancer, candida, cold sores, colitis, constipation, dental problems, depression, diaper rash, diarrhea, dry skin, headaches, mouth sores, osteoporosis, IBS, stress, toxic bowel, yeast infections. It is amazing. Such brilliant stuff. And when I first came across fermented foods, I was amazed because I was dealing with someone who had fructose malabsorption, and they used the kombucha to heal their gut, so they were able to, within several weeks of being able to never be able to digest fruit, to be able to then be able to stomach fruit. So amazing stuff. Let's see if we've got any. Okay, quick questions. How often is it possible for kefir grains to get contaminated with bad bacteria and become unsafe? How would you tell if this happens? Yes. Okay. With any sort of mold or bad bacteria, it is usually one of three colors. If it turns green and has fur, if it turns pink and has fur, or if it turns black. Okay, so in that instance, you would discard your grains and you'd have to start again. If you have white forming on the top and it's not furry, that is what we call calm yeast, and that is okay. It can be removed gently from the top, and it can be fine underneath. So depending on the layer of how thick the bacteria is and what the color is, but you can gently remove if it was just white and discard that, put it in the compost, and see how the rest is. The big test with anything to do with catering is a visual test, a smell test. Does it smell like moldy, rotten soccer socks? And most ferments will have either a neutral smell or they will not smell moldy. So have a look and then have a smell. And that actually smells so, it smells like it smells slightly gingery, slightly sweet. So yes, if in doubt and you had either black or pink or green furry mold present, then yes, start again. So there we go. Have we got any other questions? Hopefully this has been beneficial. I do have a special offer for you. I do have an 8-week gut healing program. And the next one is starting on the 16th of September. So if you are struggling with your digestion, then reach out to me, book a discovery call via my website. Let's get on the phone and talk about your symptoms, because it may be that the 8-week gut healing program is perfect timing for you. And I take you through a lot of these techniques, and I take you through a lot of accountability. You get meal plans and shopping lists and chef approved foods and a whole heap of other troubleshooting. And we go through very carefully your food journal and what's going on for you. And we play detective and see what's going on for your gut. So if that sounds like it's of interest to you, then book a free discovery call on my website. What else? You're very welcome, Anita. Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. I do have on Facebook group, I have an active group called Good Gut Health, and I often share some stuff in there as well. I'm delighted to be back. I'm hoping we're all going to see each other in a field next year. I really would love that. And thank you for tuning in. I think Ram or Christina, I think you're probably there. You want to take over. There we go. Look, hopefully you've learned something new, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you very much indeed, Trish. That was lovely, as always. And I see that the children and the dog stayed out.
They did, thank goodness. So, they'll come in and help me clean up now.
You've got them well trained.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you so much. Lovely to see you again. And we will meet in the fields again next summer, and all in much better health as well. So thank you very much indeed. Lovely to see you. Lovely to see everyone. Thank you for coming.